Hello and welcome to Identirati Office Hours. I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Glue. Today is episode 127. And if you've been enjoying the live stream and you're wondering how you can support it, there's a really easy way. You can go to the LinkedIn company page and follow it. That really helps us. Our guest today, as you can see, is Drummond Reed. W3C DID Spec co-editor and all-around decentralized identity guru. Welcome, Drummond.
Welcome, Mike. Glad to be here again.
The topic today is what is the first-person network? But before we do that, Drummond, I thought it would be cool if you could just maybe give a recap of your background. I know you were a guest before, but maybe just give a quick reminder. How'd you get here?
Yeah. I have actually been working on the problem space that we now know of as decentralized identity and trust for 33 years. It's a long time because, and Mike and I have both been frequent guests at Internet Identity Workshop that started 20 years ago. And it's been every 6 months, and I've been to every one of them. So the whole sort of arc of the evolution of, from centralized identity to federated identity and then decentralized identity, I've been through that whole thing. When blockchain started and we recognized this opportunity to really go from federated to decentralized, started my second startup, Respect Network, that then in 2016 we merged with Evernym, and I became chief trust officer there. And we really, we're trying to push the self-sovereign identity space. I was co-author of this book, which largely happened because of the pandemic. We were able to finish it. It's got 53 contributing authors besides myself, my co-author, Alex Pruchat. And so that's gotten out there in a lot of space. I love going to conferences and having people that have read the book, and it's still very, very relevant. Most of the building blocks of decentralized identity have not changed from what's in that book. Evernym was acquired by Avast, Europe's leading antivirus company, in 2021, the end of 2021, and so they started a new division there called Digital Trust Services, and I was director of trust services there for 3.5 years as we evolved and figured out how decentralized identity and digital credentials and wallets were going to become part of their consumer product suite. Things like Norton Antivirus, LifeLock, the whole consumer cyber safety space. And part of that, I then continued to work on protocols and standards for this space besides DIDs and verifiable credentials. At the Linux Foundation, we're working on Trust over IP, which just turned 5 years old. A Decentralized Identity Foundation, C2PA for content authenticity. And now LF Decentralized Trust is an umbrella for all that work there. And to figure out how we're going to scale it, we started working on, well, how are we going to actually have decentralized trust registries? That led to the founding of the Ayra Association in January, where I was seconded to work on that. And that opened up the opportunity for what we're going to talk about today, a new universal digital credential for proof of personhood called the first person credential. And that's turned into the first person project. And I left Jen in May to concentrate on that full time. And that takes us current, Mike.
That sounds like the episode recap we're watching, what is it, the latest Star Wars thing. And every once in a while we have to watch the episode recap. So that was a great recap. How many years is that total?
Well, if you add up the whole thing, I mean, from when I started down this path, I would say it's like 10 years prior to, getting officially into what we call digital identity. And then 23 now, literally, I became active in 2021. Trust IIW started in 2025. So, and that's been 20 years now. And the next one will be, number 41. So we're going to It's still going. We haven't fully solved the problem yet, as you know, Mike.
So one person who's possibly been at it longer than you is maybe Doc Searles. and
Yes.
and he has recently called today's internet infrastructure the Internet of Nothing But Accounts. And I'm wondering, how does the first person network fundamentally shift this paradigm?
It's a perfect question because Doc and his wife Joyce and the VRM or vendor relationship management community has been a big part of the early start of the first person project. And that's because his work on VRM goes almost as far back as IW. VRM being the whole idea that companies have CRMs, customer relationship management systems, for managing the relationships with us as individual consumers. But what do we have to manage our relationship with them? And so that's and of course one of the things we need is control of our own digital identity and data. So that's why VRM's always been part of Internet Identity Workshop. Um, what's happening now with decentralized identity and decentralized trust is that we're now establishing the protocol stack and the tools we need for individuals and companies, communities of any kind to be peers, right? So that from a VRM perspective, you have a relationship with the company that you control, and the company has a relationship with you. You're interacting as peers, and if you look at it through that VRM lens, the individual needs um, they need all the tooling to be that peer. And the other word that's emerging for that is it's not just you're self-sovereign, we're all digitally sovereign. So it's the whole movement towards digital sovereignty where every peer can interact with every other peer. We're all in control of our own keys and credentials and wallets and agents. We're going to talk about how this all goes into AI agents, I'm certain. And so the Doc Searles and the VRM folks said, okay, you're moving from the internet where you exist through all your accounts you have out there to no, you're digitally sovereign. You have your own, you basically bring not just your identity and your keys and your data, but your relationships anywhere you go. So we get to full portable relationships, what my friend Brad DeGraff calls portable communities. And you're no longer dependent on, oh, I've got these friends in this social network and these associates at work and these family members. I have my personal network. I take it anywhere I go.
So interestingly, there was a decision, I guess, to not use biometrics as the basis of this first person network. I'm curious, why not use biometrics? Because the way you're describing it is I'm not some account represented on Yahoo or Google. I'm actually a person. So when I step in front of my computer should just know it's me. It should be like, hi, Mike, So it seems like biometrics would be a natural way for me to sort of interface to this first person network. Why did you think maybe biometrics wasn't a good fit?
So I want to make it clear what we're saying is the first person network does not solve the problem of proofs of personhood with a global biometric database. That's what we're not doing. It's not to say at all that biometrics don't play a role in a person proving to a machine that they're a person. Our point of view is you should do that privately on your own device, exactly the way you do when you're unlocking your phone with your face.
Mhm.
Today, that is proof that there's a real person in front of a device. The challenge comes if you say, oh, we're going to prove you're a real person and you're a unique person, which is the second part of proof of personhood. Um, and we're going to do that by taking that biometric and putting it, or even a hash of it, on a global blockchain. Um,
Hmm.
that gets into some really sticky privacy issues and I would argue even worse data control issues, right? Who controls that blockchain? Who actually has cryptocurrencies tied to that blockchain? That's when it's like, let's not go there. Let's figure out a
Interesting.
way to solve the problem that does not involve sharing biometrics or indexing on biometrics. Let's just use biometrics to prove yourself to essentially a local app or agent.
No server-side biometrics, you're saying, then all out of scope.
Well, I want to be careful there too, because there's some very innovative companies doing highly privacy respecting comparison, essentially zero knowledge proofs based against biometrics. I don't want to rule them out, but with a first person network, we're about proof of personhood that actually establishes a decentralized trust graph. And our emphasis is on the decentralized trust graph, because if we're successful in building that, just like with the internet, many things become possible, and this is going to be all open standard, infrastructure. So that's our emphasis. Many solutions could then be built on top of that, and some of them could involve privacy respecting server side biometrics.
So what do you propose to use in lieu of biometrics?
So the whole thrust of the first person project began when those of us principally at Trust ORP and the companies that the partners of Gen, where I was working, said, how do we solve the problem of proof of personhood without using global biometrics? And the lens we were using was, well, how do we do it with verifiable credentials, verifiable digital credentials, and of course decentralized identifiers. It's good reason I spent.
So the presentation of verifiable credentials from your phone?
So yes, but specifically, what really jump started the whole movement, and got us out of the starting blocks, was a paper. It was published August of last year, and it's called Personhood Credentials. And you don't even have to put a link into the notes, Mike, because if you just on any search engine, put in personhood credentials, you're going to get back that paper. It's extremely widely referenced, 33 authors. And all it did was, it's a 63-page paper with 33 authors that said, hey, we need a specific type of verifiable credential called a personhood credential. And it has got two requirements. The issuer, whoever it is, and among their audience, their ecosystem, their population they serve, is in a position to issue one personal credential to a real human, unique human in that group. And the second requirement is, because you're going to now have this credential, you could show any place to prove you're a real person. It needs zero knowledge proof cryptography to ensure you're not tracked or correlated using that credential. The whole paper is just explaining, here's what we need with these new credentials. Here's why they need to use EKP. And so anyone listening to this stream, because I really want to understand these personal credentials, go get that paper, read at least the 4.5-page overview and summary, or dive into the whole thing. That's the starting point.
So I'm going to go right to the trust part of it then. What has to happen from a governance standpoint to bootstrap trust?
That is a very good question. Let me just explain that the personal credential paper defines those. We working now, that came together in the first person project, we're already working on a sort of second piece of the puzzle, which we call a verifiable relationship credential. And that's verifiable credentials between any two peers, person to person, person to business or community. It doesn't matter, any two peers. And they're issuing credentials to each other based on pairwise private DIDs, decentralized identifiers. So when the peers, the classic, I want to make sure this is clear, Mike, that folks understand how easy this can be. Anyone that's connected with you or goes to a conference or a coffee shop and forms a connection with someone else on any network that supports QR codes for connections, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, Signal, all of them, you just put up a QR code, the other person scans it, bingo, you got a connection on that network. All those connections you're forming are network specific. Our goal with first person was to say, oh, any two peers could form a connection directly, wallet to wallet, agent to agent, that has no intermediary. It's not on any of the network. It is directly between the two of them. And the credentials they issue for that could now be used to prove that you have a real relationship. So if you think about these peer-to-peer verifiable relationship credentials, and you pair them with personhood credentials that prove, oh, those two people have a relationship are part of the same digital trust ecosystem. They both have personhood credentials in that ecosystem. Now you can form a very strong, resilient, contextual, decentralized trust graph that doesn't have to exist in any central database. It exists in all the wallets and agents of all the individuals and communities, orgs, whatever that are participating. And it's the combination of those two that allows you to prove zero knowledge proof you're a real person and a unique person in those different contexts. And I needed to explain that, Mike, before answering a question about governance, because it's a really good question.
Well, let's pause there for a second. I had a follow-up question. So it's almost like you're saying we're going to issue a new assertion about the relationship between these two parties, these two entities.
Yes, but
Is that right?
I want to be clear, they each issue it to the other. There's no third party involved. It's a pure in one credential in both directions.
Okay, so it's two
If you,
credentials, not one credential.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's right. We call it a verifiable relationship credential, but if I did it with you, we met at a conference, my wallet and agent would end out issuing a credential to you. That's one direction on the relationship, and your wallet and agent would issue a credential to me. And now either one of us would be able to prove we have a relationship on the basis of those credentials. You could prove it, or I could prove it.
I've seen a number of sort of schemes where you use the output of a signature to create an ephemeral key. So two parties sign a challenge, and they use the output of that to create an ephemeral encryption key. I wonder if you could somehow, instead of issuing two credentials, maybe issue one credential that could only be created through the verification of those two different parties. Anyway.
That could be cool. It might be a nice enhancement. We could show you a whole bunch of reasons that this the respective credentials on the two parties actually give each of them. That's just the start of what you want to do. For example, I'll just make it clear, because what we've exchanged, we have wallets and agents that have now set up pairwise DIDs, right? So we have this new, DID channel between us, and we've now exchanged these credentials. 100% of that is just machine readable, right? It's just long numbers. It's not, no one could look at it. Even you or I would have to go down and do forensics, because let alone, our grandmothers. So there's a third step to the dance, right? DIDs, verifiable credentials, or verifiable relation credentials, and then the human readable part. We call them R cards, relationship cards. And that is literally like electronic business cards. We select what we want to share with each other, and boom, they're shared over that channel. And they're live digital objects that we can update over time as what I want to share with you or you want to share with me changes. That's now we've moved out of digital identity into actual, whether it's person to person or person to business or community to community relationship management.
That sounds a little bit like the idea you had years ago about my automatically updating contact book or address book. Is there sort of an overlap or intersection with that idea?
It's funny, Mike. Before I even got into this space, my first foray into all this involved an internet utility called the Internet Adapter, and it's a long story. It was a way to use back then what was the early version of Mozilla over a slip connection, and the folks that developed it were in Boulder, Colorado, and they were building the first marketplace, electronic marketplace, before, just as the web was starting, and they needed this for people to come and do it. So I took on the job of marketing it, and they were really good developers, and I was sharing them these ideas about where we're going with this stuff, and they said, oh, this is going to lead to electronic business card. And we got all excited, and now that's where it came from. Every year since then, he responds to my Christmas card going, do we have it yet? I went to Boulder to meet with an attorney that's helping us with the first person project. and got together with him, and I said, Andrew, we're finally going to deliver what that, and we're talking like 25 years. That's a long time.
Uh-huh. I'm still stuck a little bit on this relationship token, or this relationship. So I have a relationship with this e-commerce site, let's say, um, and then the e-commerce site has an assertion that says, okay, this person has agreed to have this relationship with me, and that's what. So it's proof that the person has opted into this relationship, is what this relationship token is.
It's proof in both directions. They have proof they have a relationship with you. You have proof you have a relationship with them.
But they're two different tokens signed by different issuers.
Yeah, it's interesting coming from, you use the term token coming from, the industry that you're in. In the
Mm-hmm.
decentralized identity community, everyone just calls them digital credentials or verifiable credentials. But yeah, we're talking about the same thing. And yes, each party has a token or credential from the other that they can use to prove they have the relationship.
Mm-hmm. And this credential, when you say verifiable credential, you mean a signed JWT, right?
Oh, I want to be very careful here because having been a member of the W3C Verifiable Credential Working Group, more active in 1.0, but still part of 2.0,
Mm-hmm.
the term they consider, that working group considers the term verifiable credential to mean specifically one that a digital credential that complies with the W3C verifiable credential data model specification, and
Mm-hmm.
they say that term means that. Like it or not, much of the rest of the industry uses lowercase verifiable credential to mean any format of a digitally signed credential, and that would include SD JOTs or regular JOTs. That would include ISO MDLs and MDocs. It would include Trust ORP ACDC credentials. It would include the non-creds. So
Mm.
the terminology is, at Trust ORP, I co-chair the Concepts and Terminology Working Group, and we have over 500 terms in the glossary now. So I'm just making sure everyone listening to this knows that the term verifiable credential is overloaded, and there's multiple communities that argue over that, and there are all these competing formats. The fact that W3C has now approved the 2.0 standard, it's still in contention, and there's just different, what the European Digital Identity Wallet is going to use is different than what the government of BC is using and the government of Bhutan is using. So we're a long ways from resolving the format wars for digitally verifiable credentials.
Yeah. But to answer your question, yeah, I lump all those things together and call them tokens.
Okay.
I mean, I hope we don't have to support new tokens other than JWT, but ultimately we might, we'll do that. But the truth is we don't see a lot of verifiable credential presentation and assertions today. So the demand level isn't really there. But maybe when we start seeing more of these things presented and need to represent them in policy, then we will figure out how to map these other or validate these other new types of credentials, and then map them into policy.
So that sets up perfectly, Mike. One of the key reasons we're working on the first person project, given that interoperability is currently so low in this space of digitally verifiable credentials, it's because, one reason is because there hasn't been a very compelling use case for a very broad community to adopt the same credential. Well, our point of view is, guess what? There's a very compelling use case now. It's called proof of personhood. It's being driven by pouring AI gas on the fire of
Hmm.
deep fakes and all the other ways that AI can now be used to enhance cybersecurity attacks. And I think it says a lot that the largest proof of personhood project in the world, called World, formerly WorldCoin, the co-founder is Sam Altman, right? he recognized that if you don't solve proof of personhood, it could cripple the whole AI industry, and his whole investment is the AI industry. So again, the largest project out there trying to solve the problem that now has $380 million of funding is the World Project with a cryptocurrency called WorldCoin, and it is based on a global biometric database approach. So, so if we want an alternative that is highly privacy preserving and decentralized, we need to build it. And that proof of personhood, which will be a different format, Mike, because it's ZKP. Like, as I said, read the paper. There's just universal agreement. It's only going to be privacy preserving when you present it at any site or any app, any place, if what you're presenting is in zero knowledge proof. So
it's interesting. So you're competing against Sam Altman and $380 million in venture capital.
Yeah, to put it bluntly, we are.
Right. But I don't know, a good design can go a long way. The right design. What are some of the lessons from TOIP and other decentralized identity initiatives are informing the governance model for Ayra and impacting your development of the first-person network? Like, what do you learn from some of those past efforts?
Okay, I first want to say TrustOIP is not a past effort; it's a current effort, because that's why we're 5 years old.
Previously started efforts.
Yeah,
that's not past efforts.
Yeah, previously started. And I want to point out, they're on the sort of standards and open source side. There are 4 different projects collaborating on. When we call the first person project, there is no official entity or legal home yet. It is a collaboration between Trust over IP and LF Decentralized Trust, which is the umbrella that now Trust over IP is under at the Linux Foundation. Decentralized Identity Foundation, which is not technically under that umbrella, but very close collaborator. And then the Ayra Association, which is not at not at Linux Foundation. It is a separate Swiss nonprofit set up to use the Trust over IP trust registry query protocol to enable a decentralized trust registry network. It's that decentralized trust registry network that enables a single digital credential and design and specification and governance for it to be adopted by many digital trust ecosystems. That is what we needed to introduce the first person credentials. Does that help? I could talk, if you want to get down to specifics of what do we need from Trust over IP. The short answer is we've been developing the Trust over IP stack for 5 years in order to have a single stack designed to enable digital trust and digital trust networks the same way the TCP/IP stack was designed to enable decentralized data networks. And it is patterned directly after the 4-layer TCP/IP stack. And most importantly, the secret of the TCP/IP stack is the IP layer, the spanning layer, thinnest possible protocol that introduced the addressing necessary to connect across networks.
Right.
That's how we got the
DIDs
interoperable.
right?
It's where DIDs, yes, absolutely. Well, yes, IP addresses in the TCP/IP stack. To build the whole idea, starting point for the Trust over IP stack was to use DIDs, and to say that's the cryptographically verifiable addresses we can use to have a trust spanning protocol, or TSP. I'm the co-chair along with Wenjing Chu from FutureWay and Sam Smith from the father of Kerry of the trust spanning protocol task force at Trust over IP, and we are basically in the final stages of the 1.0 spec, of which there are 2 implementations. One of them is the Open Wallet Foundation, so they're another collaborator in this. And I think the first person project may end up being the broadest initial use of the trust spanning protocol, because that is really the key piece we need.
Okay. So I want to swing this back to AI. No podcast these days is complete without an AI discussion. And so you mentioned that Sam Altman identified this need to be able to differentiate people from AI. I recently commented on one of his video that was up about him saying that, and I've done two live streams on deepfakes, The net of it is that we're only about 95% effective at identifying deepfakes, which is it's not good enough.
Yep.
Um, and so, of course, a credential gets you from 95% to closer to 100%. Nothing ever gets you to 100%.
Right.
Um, and so, how would this use case work though? Like, how in practice, like maybe walk me through like what would be how would what would be the interaction that this credential would improve?
Sure. So the whole idea of personhood credentials of any kind is that you as an individual are issued a credential from a personhood credential issuer who could be any issuer who has serves a population in which the issuer is able to assert with reasonable assurance, I know someone is a real person and a unique person in that population. And when we
Hmm.
think about, well, who does that today? Well, every government, every company, every university, and every nonprofit that actually has a membership that's engaged with a nonprofit. And those are just examples. I mean, the need to have uniqueness in order to get things like one person, one vote, or one person, one
Yeah.
share.
Anybody who has a KYC process, basically.
Absolutely right. Every bank, et cetera, et cetera. So those are all potential personhood credential issuers. So if step one is actually, I should back up. You can start peer to peer and form relationships and then gain the ability to prove their uniqueness by getting a personhood credential later. Or you can start by getting a personhood credential. We're looking at use cases that go in both directions. Either way, as you get at least one personhood credential and you get any number, you don't have to have any, but the more relationships you have in that ecosystem, that's what we call them, the ecosystem, what you're able to produce is a zero knowledge proof of how many personhood credentials you have, or do you have more than whatever the threshold the verifier is asking for. And then how many verified relationships do you have, unique relationships in those contexts. That zero knowledge proof does not have to show, well, what communities, what companies, where are those coming from, or who the relationships are. You're just producing a zero knowledge proof. Yep, these are registered personal credential issuers, and all these relationships are cryptographically verifiable within those ecosystems.
India has a system called Aadhaar, where they
Yeah.
issue numbers to everybody, and then various relying parties use those numbers to verify personhood, even dating sites, apparently.
Yep.
Um, how would something like the First Person Network be better for society than something like, say, Aadhaar?
Well, just to make it clear, they're complementary. Uh, Today, I mean, it's interesting. Even one of the obvious privacy issues with having to disclose your Aadhaar number, with in a dating context, is you might not be at that point in a relationship yet. You might want to just be exploring, who is this other person? What can they prove about themselves? So a government and a system like Aadhaar is a perfectly obvious potential issuer of a personhood credential. The difference is the personal credential is issued specifically so that a zero knowledge proof can be produced from it. So now the person can prove I am a real person. My personal credential issuer, they don't have to reveal it, although they could. You could also say, and I have a personal credential from India, right? It doesn't need to reveal anything else because of their zero knowledge proof cryptography. We're hoping, and we already know that some of the more progressive governments are interested in issuing personal credentials specifically so that their citizens can prove they're real people, unique in that nation, and they don't have to reveal their identity, their privacy-preserving credentials. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it sounds like, it's funny because you talk about it being decentralized, because I guess it's decentralized in that there's no central honeypot of data. But yet these credentials are issued by an issuer, and it's sort of implicit that there's some type of federation, that there's multiple issuers, and that I might be, let's take the European context, I might have a credential from Hungary, need to present it in Germany. So there might be two different personhood credential issuers. So you're ultimately saying what you really want to build is some type of federation between the issuers, isn't it?
And now we can answer your question about governance.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of the first person network governance framework and the Ayra trust network, which is a decentralized network of trust registries. First person credentials really, without that decentralized trust registry network, you couldn't have a cross ecosystem credential like first person credentials. So our goal as a project, and why we've already started with the work at the Ayra Foundation, is to say, great, let's agree on these requirements for first person personhood credential issuers, and then we already have folks, I'll be very specific. Ironically, we're talking all about the Linux Foundation. Guess who needs decentralized trust? Like right now, today, it's open source projects at the Linux Foundation. So there you go. Linux Foundation needs to be a personal credential issuer. They're actually a nested group of communities because every open source project of the 1,500 they have there is their own community that has a set of collaborators, the open source contributors that need to be able to trust each other. So it's a perfect example, and in fact, where we're starting. LF Decentralized Trust, when it launched last October, Jim Zemlin, the executive director, said, we need this. We need a solution for decentralized trust because we are having open source malware injection attacks. If you want to read about the most serious one, it's called the XZ attack, XZ, and just look up wired XZ attack, and you can read the whole article about it. And they're going to get worse because of AI. We need a solution for being able to trust the provenance, not just of the code, but of the developers. So we went, after Jim issued that challenge, we got together and said, hey, Jim, we think right here at Linux Foundation, we're developing the solution. This is what first person project is all about. And he turned it into the keynote address at the LF Member Summit in March. And we then held a 2-hour workshop at which Jim and the other folks said, yeah, we want you to start with the Linux kernel project. And we were like, really? You want us to start with the most valuable open source project in the world? And they said, yeah, if it works there, it can work for all of our projects. So that is one of our current focuses right now. Hats off. I want to say thank you to the executive director of LF Decentralized Trust, Daniela Barbosa, and the CTO, Hart Montgomery. He is leading the work or coordinating the work on the zero knowledge proof cryptography that we'll need.
So the goal is we really want to know that the people contributing to the Linux kernel are real people and that they've been somehow identity proofed and vetted. Is that the idea?
Yes. Well, yes. But one of the strongest ways they can be proofed is by proof of those relationships with the other developers, whether on that project or on other projects. This is a classic, I try not to use the term web of trust because it's been overused in a lot of different contexts, but it is a decentralized trust graph. And the basic concept, it exists in trust systems everywhere. What we're doing is we're saying, okay, if we can build a true decentralized trust graph based on open standards, based on the trust ORP stack, and these higher level constructs, personal credentials, verifiable relational credentials, R cards, we're going to standardize those too. Trust ORP has just approved a new working group called the Decentralized Trust Graph Working Group. We're going to launch it in September. And I invite anyone on this podcast who said, oh, I want to be part of that. Come to Trust ORP. You can join, as a company or as an individual, and join us in this work.
So you're saying that because, let's say, I'm a contributor to the Linux kernel, and 4 other people on the kernel project vouch for me because they've known me for years, or they've at least know my GitHub ID, that they're going to somehow, that would solve the sort of KYC problem for the Linux kernel project?
Exactly.
Is it something like that?
In fact, we discovered the reason they want us to start with the kernel project is because that's already a requirement. If you want to make a contribution to the Linux kernel, code contribution,
Mhm.
your Git keys need to be signed by 2 other members of the project. So it's already something to do today. They already have that, Web of Trust, the PGP model of key
Mhm.
signing. It's just slow and it takes time. It's just and
It's
we can
burdensome.
it's burdensome. And with verifiable relationship credentials, every verifiable relationship you set up is an instant two-party key signing party. Those verifiable relationship credentials you're exchanging sign the pairwise DIDs that you've exchanged, plus any other DIDs that you want to use for what we call intentional correlation. Meaning, hey, I'm a member of the LF community. I'm going to have an LF DID. I generated it. LF signs it, and when I join the LF community, and now I can share that in my relationships and prove that's really me. I control that key. I can rotate the keys. I can rotate my endpoints. This is true digital sovereignty applied to digital trust.
So a lot of these solutions, they ultimately rely on a person managing keys, and people are pretty bad at managing keys. They lose them, and they lose access, or other people get access to them. A lot of that, we've seen billions of dollars of crypto fraud based upon where they didn't secure the key properly. Um, so, um, are you punting on this issue and saying, well, this is up for the ecosystems to decide? Or do you have in the LF community, let's say, how do they deal with this issue of which keys are actually being used by, let's say, a Linux kernel contributor? Um, and where do they store those keys? And does the tooling exist to help them really manage it and secure it?
So I would argue that, and one of the nice things about starting with the Linux Foundation and Linux kernel project is you solve the problem right there at Git. Linux kernel does not use GitHub. The rest of a Linux Foundation product, the Linux kernel uses Git because Linus,
You
wrote it.
wrote it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we will actually, there are already folks who put up their hands to help us build it right into to Git, and make it really easy for those developers to use. Developer-based key management is a far cry from what the average per internet user is going to need.
Hmm.
And we are not punting on that.
So this is a
Capital
very
NOT.
sophisticated set of users, you're saying.
Yes, and I'm saying the first person project, a major focus of what we're doing is saying, and we have to solve that problem for every internet user.
Hmm.
Most of the solution to that problem, in my opinion, is not going to be technical. It's not even going to be governance. It's going to be a new way of going about providing a digital trust utility. And that is probably a topic for another episode, Mike, because that's called
Yeah.
the First Person Network Cooperative. And that's a major part of what we're doing now is forming a network cooperative that will be available to every member of the First Person Network.
And you're actually right. That is the cue for last thoughts, because we're over time just a little. But so 90 seconds. Like, what last thoughts? Next things to do, things to watch for, whatever you want to promote is okay.
As I said, First Person Project is still young. We are anyone who's interested in saying, hey, I want to follow up on this. First of all, just watch for the LinkedIn posts from any of us that are involved. You can at TrustRP, we're going to be launching the Decentralized Trust Graph Working Group. You can get directly involved there. Ayra Association, Ayra.forum, AYRA.forum is where the first white paper was written. We're working on a much larger white paper now that's going to probably be out by then this summer. So we're really excited about it. It's a big project that we hope can make as Steve Jobs put it, a serious dent in the universe. And so thanks, Mike, for shining a light on it, and I look forward to future chats about where we are.
Great. Well, now is the time to announce the next episode. Um, Youth-powered solutions for Africa's digital ID future with Elizabeth Garber and a special guest from Rwanda. So please join us on Tuesday. And with that, I'll say thank you, audience, and thank you, Drummond, and we'll see you next time.